Hi guys, my name is Phil and welcome to PhilDoes3D. I'm a multimedia and 3D artist and I stream on Twitch weekdays from 5 p.m. Pacific time in the US, 11 a.m. in Australia and 12 a.m. in the UK. We'll jump into 3D Studio Max and open up the file we were working on last week. Hope you guys are well. I want to thank Archer Best for the Twitch follow. I always appreciate it when you guys follow me on Twitch. I think what we'll do today is we'll continue working on the front of the model, those lower stairs. We'll finish hopefully up that section down there. And then we can start working on the railings and the columns that run along the outside of the terrace here. So yeah, last week we were working on the stairs and these columns and these walls here on the outside. And I think what we'll do is we'll finish up these sections here at the front before we start working on the banisters and the columns that run around the outside of the model. So let's see, let's work on, let's start with this lower tiled terrace here. I want to actually throw a bit of dirt along the edge here that runs where it meets the wall, so that you have the dirt on the wall and you'll have slight dirt pattern along the outer edge here where the dirt is built up in the corners of the terrace. So let's do that. And we'll start that by doing a unwrap UVW. We'll render the current texture out again, and then we will export the model and bring it into Mari to texture up those areas around the edges. So we'll throw an unwrap UVW on. We want to go to map channel 2. We'll move the UVs across. We'll open our UV editor. We'll select all of our UVs. And we'll throw a mapping, flatten mapping on this, just using the default settings. Okay, deselect our UVs. Now we'll go to render, render to texture. We'll press the 0 key on the keyboard for a shortcut. We're going to use existing channel, channel 2. It's already selected. We will add a diffuse map. 2K should be okay for this one, I think. We will rename it and place it in our stairs folder. That's the one that we've been working on all this time. It just helps to keep everything organized if you keep everything in one folder. I may make a subfolder in here and I'll call it rework. That'll just make it easier for me to find the textures when I bring it into Mari. And we'll call this lower texture tiles rework. We're going to save it as a target file .tga, and 24-bit is fine. Okay, so we have our channel, our diffuse map, our path, and our texture size. Actually, just let me have a look at what it's doing here. Oh, that's because we did it the first time. Okay, let's remove that one. We did a render to texture when we originally painted this up. Now we're going to rework the texture, but Max remembers that we'd already done a render to texture on it, so I'm just going to delete that file there. Now we'll do a render. Okay. We'll close the render to texture down. I'll open up the material editor. We will create a new material. We'll load in that bitmap we just rendered out. And we'll pipe that into the diffuse channel, and we'll turn on show material and show realistic material. I'm going to assign the material, and it will look funky until we copy the mapping channels over. So we'll do that right now. We'll go into the utilities tab, channel info, and open up channel info. We will copy the UVs from channel 2 into channel 1. And that brings back our original texture. The look of our original texture, and we'll clear out channel 2 because we don't need it. It just increases the file size, and there's no need to keep it really. Okay, now that we've created our new texture with the render to texture, we've applied it to the model, we've copied the UV channel over, we'll export, selected. We're going to export it into our rework folder as an OBJ, and we'll call it lower terrace tiles rework. Save that and leave the defaults for the export, should be fine. Okay, let's jump into Mari and create a new project. We're going to call it lower terrace tiles rework. I'm just going to change my root path to my temp directory on my E drive, and we'll load up the OBJ file we just exported from Max. And there it is there, so we'll open that up. We're going to create a color map. We're going to create it at 2K, and we'll hit OK. Okay, I'm just going to turn on flat shading so I can see the model and texture a little bit more easily. Now I'm going to right click in the color channel, import and import into the layer stack. We're going to find our folder, our rework folder. Again, just pop a star in here because it defaults to TIFF and we're working with Target. You can work with TIFF if you prefer, but Target is generally pretty good. We'll select that texture we just rendered out from render to texture in 3D Studio Max, and we'll import all patches. Okay. Now it'll be this way for the top. And I know that just by the shape of the model and the way it sits in the in 3D Studio Max. So we'll just work. I'm not going to put masking on for this because I don't care about these back edges. All of those back edges along here are hidden behind the model. There's a wall that butts up against all of this, so it's not seen. So I'm mainly concerned with these edges along here, around here, and along here. Possibly along the edge here as well, but again, unless you get doing a render where you're flying into the model to look behind the stairs out, you're not going to see any of that generally when you're rendering out the model. So let's load up some textures. Textures. Aged and stressed. I'll grab all of these. And again, because Mari is just placing a pointer to these texture files, it's not physically loading them into the program. You're not using any of the memory on your PC, so you can load up as many textures as you want. without worrying about running out of memory. It's almost finished. Okay, I'm just going to grab some dirt textures as well, which is my alpha maps generally, which are here. If you've been following along over the last few weeks as we've been texturing up and creating the model, you'll notice that I generally, for this model anyway, I've worked with the same 2 lots of texture sets. And that's just to keep things consistent throughout the whole model. It just helps. You don't have to, but yeah, if you work with the same texture sets, then you're going to get, particularly with the dirt maps, you're going to get a consistent look along the across the entire model once it's all finished. Okay, now we're going to create a new layer. Always work on a new layer, so if you make a mistake, you can delete the layer and you're back to a clean start. And let's find something that we can throw along the edges there. Go down to my alpha maps. Now, if this was an edge that was high up, you'd have a texture that ran down the outside, so you'd probably use something like this one here, where you have these watermarks where it's run down the side of the wall. But because this is a texture that's been laying, that will lay flat, you want more of a texture that looks like dirt is built up in the corners of the against the wall. So something like this wouldn't work. You want something more like, again, that's really more of a running texture. It's just important to keep to remember when you're putting in your dirt marks that you put in dirt that looks realistic. And like I said, because it's more of a running texture, if it's laying flat on a surface like this, it won't look natural. So always keep that in mind as you dirty up an object. We're looking for more of something maybe like this. It's not the one that I want. This is actually a texture that's been taken from a metal surface. Maybe one like this. Maybe. More like this. This is a texture that's that has none of those running lines in it, so it's not meant to go on a wall. It's meant to go on a flat surface. Horizontal, not vertical. So this one should work quite well. Let's just zoom in on our model a little bit. We'll start here in this corner, I think. Just going to angle my model, and again I'm angling it away from me, not towards me, but away from me, so I don't accidentally hit any of the texture at the front here where I don't want to paint on. Scale that down. I'm more interested in the dark part of the texture and not the white, so I'm going to rotate the texture around, and again, the closer to the edge, the more control you have. The closer to the middle, the faster it will rotate. So always try and work from the edge to get finer control. Okay, and again, we're more concerned with the dark part of the texture here, so we're working on a new layer. Just going to start painting that in. Like that. Press the Alt key to bake it down. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit on the model and angle it around just a bit. Now I'm going to rotate my texture. Something like that. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. And I'm painting it down just till I hit that white part of the texture, because it's the black part that I'm more interested in. Okay, let's rotate our model a little bit and rotate our texture a little bit. And paint that in there like that. And again, painting it down just until I hit the white edge of that texture there. Press the Alt key to back it down. Rotate our model, rotate our texture. And again, I'll paint that in. And bake it down. The texture right here behind, at this back section is actually behind the stairs, and so it's not going to be seen, but it's quick to paint it in, so we might as well do it just to keep everything consistent. Okay, let's rotate our texture, move it around, paint it in, bake it down. As I said, if you don't want to hit the Alt key to bake it down in Mari, if you're using Mari, you can set up the preferences in the program to auto bake for you. I just like having more control, so I don't want to bake down until I decide that that's exactly what I wanted. Paint that in. And also, you know, you could do this work in Photoshop as well if you prefer. You don't have to use a painting program. Substance Painter is another good painting program from Algorithmic. A lot of people like to use that as well. Rotate that around, maybe like that. And bake it down. And maybe in through here like this. So we come around that corner and bake that down. Okay, let's rotate our model a bit. Again, angling it away from us. Rotate our texture. And we'll paint it in through here. Like that. And we'll bake that down. And I am going to just do a bit through this side just here. I won't do through here, because our stairs, our lower stairs, butt up against this part here. I could do a slight dirt texture along here. I'll wait at this stage. We'll wait till we take it back into Max, and then we'll have a look at it and see if it needs it there. Because we've got our project here in Mari, it's easy to jump back and forth between them and work that way. Again, I'm angling the model away from me. I'm going to rotate the texture a little and paint that in there like that. Because it's such a on such an angle, this round section, I'm going to have to rotate the texture quite a bit. Rotate it around through there like that and bake it in. I'm also going to just get rid of that little bit of white in that corner by painting some black in. Okay, now we'll move around to the other side. And I'm moving the model just by holding the Alt key down and left mouse clicking to rotate and center mouse button to move. Okay. And again, I'm holding down the Control key to rotate the texture. Paint that in there. Bake it down. Rotate the texture. Bake it down. And rotate the texture. Maybe a little more. Okay. We'll bake that down. Let's zoom back out a bit on our model. so we can get a better idea of what it looks like. And move the texture out of the way. Now let's work with our layer style. So either a darken or a multiply most probably, and I think a darken will work better. And we'll just pull it back a bit, maybe like that. Now I want to have I'll save this project quickly. And we'll click on our color channel and go export flattened, export everything flattened. We're in our rework folder. And it's called Lower Terrace Tiles Rework. Lower Terrace Tiles Rework. We'll go underscore painted .tga, export all patches. And we'll jump back into 3D Studio Max, back into our material editor, back into our original material here, and we'll load up the new one we just exported. Okay, let's close that down and have a bit of a look at this. So now we have that dirt texture in the corner here. That just makes it look as if the dirt is built up in the corner a bit. Maybe a little dark. It may be okay, but I am noticing that the one that we painted along the straight part of the texture here isn't showing up. It's obviously hidden behind, because you can see that the actual geometry goes back further than the wall. So all we'll have to do to fix that is to move it forward a little. Let's have a look at the one around the outer edge here. And again, that's not looking too bad, where it's dirtied up just that corner here on the outer edge. So let's just quickly paint in the straight part here. So we'll jump back into Murray. We'll rotate our model around a bit, and it's this edge here that we have to bring the texture up on. So we'll just zoom in, bring our texture down, rotate it around. We're still working on the same layer. That's fine, we don't need to create a new layer. I'm just going to pull that dirt texture forward a little. Pull it forward a little bit more. And I'll bake that down. And we'll jump over to the other side and do the same thing. So we're going to pull it forward. And then pull it forward a bit more. And then bake that down. Now I'm going to re-export that texture, export everything flattened again. Mari remembers the last time we exported it, so we'll just overwrite that file. And we'll jump back into Max. And we'll go into the material editor. And we'll reload that texture again. And now we have our dirt texture showing up just along the outside edge. We didn't want to come in too far. Just check the other side. It looks like we could probably do with coming in just a touch more. So again, we'll just jump back into Mari. I'm just going to pull that up just a smidgen. think just for consistency, I'm going to blend that corner in a bit more. Just like that. We'll work on the other side. And again, we're going to bring this one in just a little bit. It just came up a bit short, so we'll pull it forward just a bit, maybe a bit more, like that. And again, I'm just going to clean up that corner here, just by rotating it around and filling in that little bit here on the corner. Okay, we'll bake that down, and we will export flattened again. Yes, we can overwrite the old file. We'll jump back into Max. Looks like it's actually loaded it up this time without us having to reload the texture, and it's just brought it through the front there, which is what we wanted. So we've just dirtied up the corners around the outside of that tile. It just makes it look a bit more natural. And as far as the one that runs along the front here, I don't think we'll do that because it's more open. You're not going to get a build-up of dirt like you will where it catches in the corners. So I'm not going to dirty that edge here up. Let's work on, well, before we do anything, let's just quickly save that. And I think we'll work on these decorative pieces here on the top of these short columns. It's always wise to save out regularly just in case something happens, Max crashes. Max has a feature where if it does crash, it'll save the last file it was working on, but you shouldn't rely on that because sometimes that doesn't work. So always save your file. It's just a safer way to go. You don't want to be working for hours, have Max or any program crash and lose all that work. So just before we move on to texturing that up, I want to fix this here. So this part we didn't texture, and we didn't texture it because we have to put another wall here. So the easiest way to do that is going to be to grab this wall here. I'm going to hold the Shift key down and make a copy. Not an instance, but a copy. I'm going to go into the top viewport. And we'll zoom in a bit. And we'll rotate it around. We have to follow this edge here, that part of the wall just there. So I'm rotating it on the wrong axis there. We just move it into position, so I can get a bit better idea. These shadows, if they annoy you, you can turn them off in Max here, go to a black color so you get a better idea of what you're doing. Just going to rotate that around. Move it in a little. Now, let's see if we can put a bend on this. It may work or it may not. Sometimes Max I don't think a bend will work for us here. Just let me collapse all. Okay, because we had our edges selected when we softened up the hard edges along the outside of the model, which could have been causing a problem. We'll try the bend again, and if it doesn't work this time, we can try resetting the X form. Okay, that should work for us. So we're just going to bend it around until we follow that curve a little bit more closely, so maybe a little bit more. And I know when I'm following it because I'm looking at the difference between that curve there, which is this base, the tiled base, and the corner of the wall. So now let's move that in a bit. So we're up to maybe just about there. And now the model is way too big for the piece that we need. So all we need to do here is put an edit polygon. We'll go into quick slice, and because we're working on the top viewport, we're looking directly down on the model. We're going to slice it maybe, I know there's a column in here, so maybe if I slice it like that. And here, I've just got to be a bit more careful because it butts up against the wall, so I need to slice it once it's entered past the wall, which will be the green columns here. So it'll be back in here. So I'll jump back into the top viewport and I'll slice it maybe there. Now I'll go back up to polygon mode. Select the bit on the end here that we cut off, and I'll delete it. And the bit here on the end. In fact, I'm just going to jump into wireframe mode really quickly. Alright. So we got rid of the bit on the end there. We'll get rid of the bit on the end there, and I'll jump back into flat color. Alright. Now I'm just going to rotate around a little so I can get a better view. Okay, that butts up against there. It's actually the edge of a step. That's fine there. And I'm noticing the edge of the step here finishes just a little short, so what I think I'll do is I'll isolate these stairs, turn off polygon selection there. So if I isolate the steps so I can see exactly what's going on here, I'm going to collapse all this because we don't need to work on the stack anymore. I'm going to select from the top viewport those verts there on the end. I'm just going to pull that out a little bit. We'll turn off isolate so we can get a better view of what we're doing here. And that's taken it up to the edge there, and it hasn't disturbed our UVs along the steps. So, okay, we'll turn off vertex, deselect. And the reason I grabbed this piece to move here is because this piece and this piece are textured differently. They've got two different textures on them. If I grabbed this piece and moved it here, you would notice that repetition of the texture because they're right beside each other. But by grabbing this piece, you're less likely to notice that you're using the same geometry. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one here. So I'm just going to collapse all. I'm going to hold the shift key down and move a copy over here. Again, a copy, not an instance. We'll go back to the top viewport. We'll move it into position over here. I'm going to rotate it around just a little bit. I have angle snap turned on. That just makes it a little easier to snap it in increments as opposed to freehand. You can turn freehand back on if you want to get some finer control. Let's see if we can copy this bend modifier. We may be able to, we may not. It will depend if the geometry is similar or not. Let's paste that on. And that worked quite well. So that should give us the bend that matches up from the other side. They both should be identical. So we're just going to rotate that around. till it lines up with that outer edge, and we're going to move it into position, maybe like that. Now we're going to throw an edit poly on. Again, we're going to do our quick slice trick where we grab quick slice and we slice off the bit that we don't want, maybe from here to here, and then this bit back in here. And then we're going to go to polygon. I'm going to turn wireframe back on. And we're going to select the bit that we just cut and delete, and the bit here in the corner that we cut off. We'll delete that as well. We'll jump back into flat color. Okay. And back into the 3D view. Just going to check the other side here. All right, we could probably move the move it in just a little bit. Just like that, so it butts up against that railing just there. And it's hidden now, that texture that we didn't texture up. We didn't texture it up for the reason that we knew we were going to add geometry onto it. So, all right, let's just get this angled up a bit better, and we'll do another quick save. Remember guys, if you have any questions, feel free to pop into chat. If I can, I'll do my best to answer. If you just want to pop in and say hello, that's cool too. If you just want to lurk and watch, that's completely fine as well. Let's start texturing up these little decorative pieces here. So I'm just going to isolate them really quickly because I know that there are two pieces that are grouped here. So I'm going to ungroup them. Select that first piece. I'm going to turn it into a poly because it's always better to work in edit poly than edit mesh. You just have a lot more options with edit poly than you do with edit mesh. I'm going to attach that back piece there.